We wanted to fix the future. The first sign was the silence. No birdsong, no hum of traffic, no background static of civilization, just stillness, unnatural and absolute. Dr. Janice Tarlow didn't know what she was hearing until the sound of her own heartbeat filled her ears. She stood alone in the observation chamber, the glass window fogging from her breath as she stared into the containment unit beyond. Subject Theta 9 had stopped moving. It had been twitching for hours, limbs jerking in unnatural rhythm, mouth working around words that didn't make sense. Now it stood perfectly still, eyes wide open, locked on her. The mycelium threads that once webbed across its skin were gone. Drawn inward, pulsing beneath the surface like something alive was waiting for a cue. Janice tapped the intercom. Dr. Rourke, the subjects entered a dormant state again. No movement for 5 minutes. Neural scans? A burst of static, then a voice, panicked and breathless. Janice, it's not dormant, it's listening. She turned back to the window just in time to see Subject Theta 9 smile. Then the alarms screamed, containment breach. The hallway outside erupted in red light and sirens. Screams followed, wet, guttural, cut short before they reached a second syllable. Doors slammed shut, emergency seals hissed into place. The entire lower level went into lockdown. But it was already too late. The spores had spread. They thought they were building salvation, a cognitive-enhancing biotech fungus, designed to elevate the human mind, link thoughts, erase loneliness, cure rage, funded in secret, grown in isolation, modified to integrate with the nervous system. What they created was something else. The fungus didn't evolve, it adapted, merged with a dormant pathogen from the deep freeze, learned from its hosts, took their knowledge, their language, their instincts, and it remembered. One by one, the scientists stopped resisting. Some screamed, some wept, and some smiled before they were consumed. Months later, as cities burned and governments crumbled, a single signal echoed through the airwaves. Not static, not noise, a pattern. A voice, twisted, fractured, many, but speaking as one. Your time ends, and we begin. Elias Carter adjusted the straps of his gas mask as he crept through the skeletal remains of what had once been a research facility. The air was thick with the scent of decay and something worse, a fungal musk that clung to the walls like old memories. The glow of his flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating curling tendrils of pale mycelium creeping along the floor, pulsing faintly like veins beneath diseased skin. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice barely audible through the mask's filter. Lena Vasquez followed just behind him, her own mask fogging slightly with every breath. She clutched a notepad, hastily scribbling observations on the fungal growth patterns. Unlike Elias, her fear was tempered by fascination. "It's expanding," she murmured. "These formations, they're thicker than they should be. It's as if they're listening." Dax Mitchell, the group lead security, let out a low grunt as he scanned the hallways with his rifle. "I don't like this place. Feels wrong, like something's watching." Elias knew better than to dismiss that feeling. He had spent years in places like this, laboratories that had once held the promise of breakthroughs, now reduced to tombs for their creators. But this facility, buried beneath layers of collapsed concrete and rusting steel, was different. This was where it had started. The harvester virus, the beginning of the end. Harper Lee, their resident tech expert, knelt beside a broken terminal, running gloved fingers along its cracked screen. Power's dead, but maybe the hard drives are salvageable. If I can get these back to Outpost Zero, we might learn something. Elias was about to respond when a distant sound made his blood run cold. A wet, organic rustling, like 1,000 whispering voices trapped beneath the walls. Then came the tapping. A slow, deliberate rhythm against the metal pipes, echoing from deep within the facility. Lena stiffened. They're communicating. Dax raised his rifle. Or a warning. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, and then, from the corridor ahead, a figure stepped into the flashlight's beam. At first, it looked human, its frame gaunt but intact, dressed in the tattered remains of a lab coat. But as it turned toward them, its face twisted in an unnatural grin, its lips moving in a mimicry of speech. "Help! Me!" it whispered. But the voice was wrong, hollow, layered. Elias swallowed hard. This wasn't a survivor. This was a harvester, and it had been waiting for them. Descent into darkness. The harvester moved first. Its body jerked unnaturally, muscles twitching beneath pallid, veined skin. The grin on its face never wavered as it lunged forward, moving faster than any corpse had the right to. Elias barely had time to react before Dax raised his rifle and fired. The shot echoed through the corridor, deafening in the confined space. The harvester's head snapped back, a burst of dark, coagulated blood spraying the walls. It collapsed to the ground, convulsing, twitching, shifting. Then, impossibly, it started pulling itself up again. "Not possible," Dax muttered, already lining up another shot. "No!" Lena shoved his rifle barrel downward. "Shooting won't stop it. Not like that." The harvester's lips moved, a whisper escaping its throat, layered and broken. "Help! Me!" The words came from its mouth, but the voice came from somewhere deeper, somewhere wrong. Harper was already on her knees at the broken terminal, typing frantically. "I think I can override the security lockdown. Buy us time to get out of here. Just keep that thing away from me." The harvester stopped mid-motion, its body trembling. Then the tapping began again, this time all around them. Elias's heart pounded. There's more. The pipes shuddered. A wet, organic rustling filled the air as shadows moved in the corridors beyond their flashlights. The hive had heard them. "Move! Now!" Elias barked, grabbing Lena's arm and pulling her down the hallway. Dax covered their retreat, firing controlled bursts at the shifting figures in the darkness. "We have to go deeper," Elias said through clenched teeth. "We find another exit or we die up here." Lena barely kept up, her mind racing. "Elias, we need to understand what they're doing. Why didn't that thing die? They're evolving." "We not the time, Lena," Harper snapped, her fingers flying over a wrist-mounted interface. "I've got a partial map. There's an elevator shaft ahead. If we can reach the lower levels, we might lose them." "Or trap ourselves," Dax growled. "Better than dying here." Elias pushed forward, leading them into a larger chamber. Rusted railings lined the edge of a yawning elevator shaft. The cables long since snapped, leaving nothing but a black abyss below. Lena peered over the edge, swallowing hard. "How far down?" "No idea," Elias admitted. He turned to Harper. "Is there any power to the emergency ladder system?" Harper scanned her screen. "Negative. Looks like manual descent. Hope nobody's scared of heights." Dax threw a glow stick into the darkness. It fell for what felt like forever before clattering onto a platform far below. A distant, shrill wail echoed up the shaft. Lena turned pale. "That wasn't human." Elias grabbed the nearest rope. "Then let's not keep it waiting." And with that, he jumped, vanishing into the abyss below. The others had no choice but to follow. Beneath the surface. Elias's boots slammed onto the metal platform, his knees bending to absorb the impact. The others followed in quick succession. Harper landed with a grunt, Lena with surprising grace, and Dax with a heavy thud. The glow stick from above cast eerie green light across the rusted steel floor, barely illuminating the cavernous space around them. "Where the hell are we?" Dax muttered, rifle raised as he scanned the shadows. Lena adjusted her glasses, her breath shallow. "Judging by the structural layout, we're in the lower research levels. This is where they did the real experiments, the ones they buried." "Great," Harper groaned. "So we just dropped into a nightmare." Elias steadied himself, forcing a calm he didn't quite feel. "We need to find another exit. Harper, check for power. Lena, see if you can find any research logs. Dax." A sound cut him off. A wet, slithering noise. Close. The team froze as something shifted in the darkness beyond the glow stick's reach. A faint clicking echoed through the chamber, like bone against metal. Then, the breathing started. Slow, rasping inhalations, coming from multiple directions. Dax raised his rifle. "Tell me that's not what I think it is." Lena's voice was barely a whisper. "They're here." A figure emerged from the darkness, but this one was different from the harvester above. Its body was partially fused to the wall, strands of thick fungal tissue binding its arms like a grotesque marionette. The glowstick's dim light caught the reflection of too many eyes, some human, some not. It inhaled sharply. Then it screamed. The walls around them erupted. Harvesters poured from the recesses, their movements erratic, inhuman. Some still wore the remnants of lab coats, their flesh interwoven with the growing biomass of the facility. Others skittered along the walls like insects, their limbs jerking at unnatural angles. Elias fired first, his bullets tearing through one's chest, but it barely staggered. Dax followed with a headshot, dropping another, but for each one they took down, more came. "Move!" Elias shouted, pushing Lena forward. "Find a way out!" Harper frantically scanned her wrist interface. "There's a security door about 50 meters to our left. If there's still backup power, I can get it open." "Then run!" Dax yelled, unloading a spray of bullets before turning to follow. Lena's mind raced as they ran, her instincts battling her scientist's curiosity. The harvesters weren't just attacking, they were moving with purpose, like a unit, like a hive. As they neared the security door, the corridor behind them filled with an inhuman screeching. Elias turned back in time to see something massive moving in the dark, a shape too large, too fast. "Harper, now would be a good time!" Elias shouted. "Almost there!" Harper's fingers flew across the panel. "Come on, come on!" A heavy thud shook the ground behind them. The massive form stepped into the faint glow of their lights, revealing a grotesque amalgamation of bodies fused together into a singular, writhing mass. Faces contorted in silent screams, their mouths forming words they no longer understood. "Open the damn door!" Dax roared. With a final beep, the panel flashed green. The security door groaned to life, metal grinding against metal. "Go!" Elias shoved Lena through first, followed by Harper and Dax. As he turned to follow, something cold and slimy wrapped around his ankle. He fell hard, his flashlight skidding across the floor. The massive creature loomed over him, dozens of mouths opening in unison to whisper, "Stay with us." Elias kicked free and rolled through the door just as it slammed shut behind him. Darkness enveloped them once more, but the whispers didn't stop. They were already inside, whispers in the darkness. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing the team in near-complete darkness. Only the glow of Harper's wrist interface cast faint, flickering light against the walls. Their breathing was heavy, ragged, the echoes bouncing eerily in the confined space. Elias pressed his back against the cold metal door, heart hammering. On the other side, something scraped at the steel, a slow, deliberate sound, like claws testing for weakness. "We're not safe here," Dax growled, flipping the safety off his rifle. "We weren't safe anywhere," Harper shot back, furiously scanning the map on her screen. "But this section wasn't supposed to have any active harvesters. Something's wrong." Lena kneeled beside Elias, her fingers brushing his arm. "You all right?" Her voice was softer than usual. "Yeah," he muttered, shaking off the feeling of those hands, no, those mouths, grasping at him. "But I'm starting to think we just walked into something worse." The room was large but cluttered, filled with overturned desks, shattered glass, and decomposed bodies still strapped to medical gurneys. Monitors lined the far wall, cracked but not completely dead. Flickering images distorted across their surfaces, showing brief glimpses of archived security footage. And then a voice crackled through the static. "If someone is seeing this, then God help you." The team spun toward the sound. One of the monitors sputtered, showing the grainy image of a scientist, his lab coat stained with something dark. His eyes were wild, darting over his shoulder as if something lurked just beyond view. "This is Dr. Adrian Kessler, lead researcher of the Harvester program," the recording continued. "If you're watching this, then the facility's containment has failed. You need to leave. Now." "No kidding," Dax muttered, his eyes fixed on the screen. "You don't understand." Kessler's voice turned desperate. "It's not just infection, it's integration. The virus doesn't just consume the body, it preserves the mind. Every harvester we've encountered, they remember, they think. And worst of all," a wet crunch echoed through the speakers, followed by a blood-curdling scream. The screen cut to black. Silence. Then, Lena whispered, "They're still aware." Harper's hands trembled over the keyboard. "That means every single one of them. They know what they are." Elias exhaled sharply. "That's why they spoke. That's why they're coordinated. They're not just acting on instinct." A faint noise made them all freeze. It wasn't the scratching on the door. It was inside the room. A gurney shifted, then another. The corpses strapped to them twitched. One of them turned its head, dried lips parted, revealing teeth stained black with rot. It wasn't snarling. It wasn't growling. It was smiling. "You heard him," it rasped, its voice layered with something deeper, something unnatural. "You should leave." Then every corpse in the room sat up at once and the lights went out. Escape and extraction. The room erupted into chaos. Elias barely had time to react before the corpses lunged, restraints snapping like brittle twigs. Shadows moved in the flickering light of Harper's wrist interface, grotesque figures rising from the gurneys with jerking, unnatural movements. Their grins never faded. "Move!" Elias bellowed, grabbing Lena by the wrist and yanking her away from a lunging harvester. Dax fired, his rifle flashing in the darkness. One of the creature's heads snapped back, but instead of collapsing, it simply turned toward him with that same twisted smile. "Bullets aren't doing much," Dax growled, already backpedaling toward the exit. "Because they aren't mindless," Lena gasped, dodging another grasping hand. "They know pain. They know how to keep going." "Less analyzing, more running," Harper snapped, slamming her hand onto a control panel near the door. Sparks shot out. As the emergency systems whirred to life, red backup lights flickered along the corridor outside. offering the team their only clear escape route. Elias fired 2 quick rounds at an advancing harvester, aiming for its legs instead of its head. The creature stumbled, giving him just enough time to push through the door. "Everyone out! Now!" Harper was the last one through, her fingers flying over the wrist interface as she initiated a lockdown sequence. The heavy doors began sliding shut, but the harvesters surged forward, forcing their way through the narrowing gap. One got through. It tackled Elias, sending them both crashing to the floor. Its fingers dug into his shoulder, pressing him down as its face hovered inches from his own. Those eyes, full of something Elias didn't want to name, locked onto his, and the thing whispered, "We remember." Dax's boot connected with its head, sending it sprawling. "Get up, Carter!" Elias didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled to his feet just as the doors slammed shut, severing the harvester's pursuit, at least for now. The team didn't stop running. They barreled through the winding corridors, retracing their steps toward the surface. Emergency lights buzzed above them, casting eerie shadows that made every corner feel like a threat waiting to pounce. "We got what we needed," Harper shouted between breaths. "That terminal had secured research logs. I pulled the drive." "What did you get?" Elias asked, leading the charge through an abandoned security checkpoint. "I won't know until we decrypt it back at Outpost 0, but if Kessler's logs are on here, we might finally understand what we're dealing with." A guttural roar echoed behind them. The doors hadn't held for long. "They're still coming," Lena gasped. Elias spotted their way out, a vertical maintenance shaft leading to the surface. A ladder stretched into the darkness above, an access hatch barely visible in the dim emergency lighting. "Climb," Elias ordered, boosting Lena up first. Harper followed, then Dax. As Elias grabbed onto the rungs, a violent force slammed into the base of the ladder. The harvesters had reached them. A hand wrapped around Elias's ankle, its grip like iron. He kicked hard, his boot connecting with a malformed jaw. The creature reeled, giving him just enough time to pull himself higher. Dax reached down, grabbing Elias by the arm and hauling him up the last few rungs. The hatch burst open above them. Cold night air rushed in, a stark contrast to the suffocating stench below. One by one, they pulled themselves onto the surface, collapsing onto the cracked pavement of the abandoned research facility. For the first time since entering that hellhole, silence. Harper clutched the data drive to her chest, her hands trembling. "We need to get back to base. Fast." Elias looked back at the open hatch, knowing this wasn't over. "We will, and then we figure out how to stop this." As they moved into the night, the echoes of whispered laughter rose from below. The harvesters weren't done with them yet. Campfire revelation. The fire crackled weakly against the cold night air, its flickering embers casting elongated shadows along the ruins of what had once been a roadside diner. The team had chosen this place to rest. A roof overhead, walls to block the wind, and enough visibility to spot anything approaching. It wasn't safe, but it was safer than being out in the open. Elias sat closest to the fire, rolling his sore shoulder after the close call in the facility. His mind was still racing with the whispers of the harvesters, the impossible way they had spoken, thought. That grin, that knowing look. It made his skin crawl. Lena sat cross-legged beside him, her notepad resting against her knee. Even now she scribbled furiously, documenting everything they had seen. Across from her, Harper was hunched over the data drive, connecting it to her wrist interface and running preliminary scans. Dax, ever the sentry, was perched near the doorway, his rifle resting across his lap as he kept watch on the empty streets beyond. "All right," Elias exhaled. "What do we know so far?" Harper shook her head. The drive is encrypted, but I pulled some raw logs. It's messy, but I'm piecing it together. Kessler's research logs confirm what we feared. The harvesters aren't just infected. They're evolving. Lena tapped her notepad. That's consistent with what we saw. Their ability to communicate isn't just mimicry, it's real cognition, memory retention. They knew things, tactics even. Dax let out a low grunt. I don't like that. Makes them unpredictable. Elias nodded. We also saw different types. That one in the lab coat was still mostly intact, almost human in the way it moved and spoke. But the ones in the deeper levels? They were worse. Lena flipped a page. There's definitely variation. I've been categorizing them based on observed behavior. She held up her notes for the group to see. Whisperers, the ones that spoke. Highly intelligent. Retained some human characteristics, but with an eerie, detached awareness. Capable of setting traps and communicating in ways beyond simple aggression. Drones. More common, these were the shambling, aggressive types. They still had coordination, but acted more on impulse. They moved in packs, responding to some unseen signal from the whisperers. Burrowers. The ones in the walls. These creatures seemed less humanoid, their bodies partially fused with fungal growths. They could remain dormant for extended periods, blending into their surroundings, waiting for prey. Horrors. Unclassified. The deep dwellers. The ones they hadn't seen fully yet, but could hear moving beneath the facility. The ones that made the walls breathe. A heavy silence followed. So there's an entire ecosystem developing, Harper said, staring at the notes. It's not just a virus. It's a new order. Dax shifted uncomfortably. Question is, can it be stopped? Elias poked at the fire, watching as the embers danced in the wind. Maybe. But we need more intel. If Kessler left notes on a cure, on weaknesses, anything, we have to find it. Harper tapped her screen. Then our next move is simple. We get this drive back to Outpost 0, decrypt it, and see what Kessler was hiding. Lena closed her notepad. And hope we don't run into anything worse along the way. The fire burned low as the group fell into an uneasy silence, each lost in thought. Outside, the wind carried a faint sound, distant, hollow laughter drifting through the ruins. The harvesters were still watching, and they were waiting. The road to Outpost 0. Dawn broke over the ruins, painting the shattered landscape in hues of orange and gray. The fire had burned down to smoldering embers, and the team moved with quiet efficiency, packing their gear and double-checking weapons. They had a long journey ahead. Elias stood at the entrance of the diner, scanning the horizon through a pair of battered binoculars. The road stretched before them, cracked and littered with the remnants of a world that had collapsed. There were no signs of movement, yet. We move fast and quiet, Elias said, lowering the binoculars. If we're lucky, we'll make it to Outpost 0 before nightfall. And if we're not? Dax asked, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. Then we don't stop moving, Harper answered, securing the data drive inside a protective pouch. We can't risk losing this intel. Lena adjusted her pack, her notepad still clutched tightly in one hand. The harvesters won't just let us leave. They've been watching us, studying us. Which means they know we have something valuable, Elias finished. Let's go. The team moved in formation, staying off the main roads whenever possible, using the wreckage of cars and buildings for cover. The landscape was eerily silent, save for the occasional distant echo of shifting debris. It was never clear whether it was the wind or something else. They had made good time, covering several miles before the first sign of trouble appeared. Harper was the first to hear it. A rhythmic clicking, almost like nails tapping against metal. She stopped, raising a fist to signal the others. "Something's nearby," she whispered. The team pressed themselves against the side of a crumbling overpass, weapons at the ready. The sound grew closer, more deliberate. Elias risked a glance around the corner, and his stomach turned. A burrower. It moved unnaturally, half fused to the remains of an old highway barrier. Its body was partially embedded in a mass of fungal tendrils that pulsed with sickly light. It twitched as if sensing something unseen, its head jerking in sharp, unnatural movements. "Don't make a sound," Lena breathed. The creature's distorted limbs flexed, its fingers scraping against the pavement. For a moment, it seemed to lose interest, retracting slightly into the fungal growth. Then the wind shifted. The burrower froze. Its head snapped in their direction. Elias didn't wait. "Run!" The team sprinted, their boots slamming against the pavement. The burrower let out a gurgling screech, its body convulsing as it ripped free from the fungus. It moved fast, too fast, skittering across the ground like a grotesque spider, its elongated fingers clawing at the asphalt. Dax turned and fired. The bullets tore into the creature's torso, but it barely slowed. The fungus that clung to its body absorbed the impact, sealing the wounds almost instantly. "Keep moving!" Elias shouted. They tore through the ruins, weaving between wreckage and crumbling structures. The burrower gave chase, its screeches echoing through the empty city. More sounds answered from the distance. They weren't alone. "We need higher ground," Harper called, pointing to a nearby collapsed building that sloped upward like a broken ramp. One by one, they scrambled up the debris, Dax covering their retreat with short, controlled bursts of fire. The burrower lunged, nearly grabbing Lena's ankle before she kicked it away, sending it tumbling back down. Elias reached the top first, grabbing Harper's arm and pulling her up. "Come on!" Dax was the last to climb, panting hard as he turned to see the burrower still struggling below. But it wasn't alone anymore. Figures emerged from the ruins, whisperers, watching, smiling. "We have to keep moving," Elias said, pulling the team away from the ledge. "We're being herded." Harper clutched the data drive tighter. "Then we better not let them catch us." As they moved across the rooftops, the city below came alive with movement. The harvesters were closing in, a desperate gambit. The rooftops gave them a brief advantage, but Elias knew it wouldn't last. The harvesters were patient hunters. They were being pushed toward something, forced to move where the creatures wanted. That had to change. He skidded to a stop at the edge of a partially collapsed building, looking down at the ruined street below. A gas station sat at the intersection, its rusted pumps still intact. The surrounding structures were weak, some reduced to skeletal remains of their former selves. This could work. "We make our stand here," Elias said, turning to the team. "We set a trap, turn the tables on them." Dax frowned. "You sure about that? We don't know how many are coming." "We know enough," Harper said, gripping the data drive strapped to her chest. "If we keep running, they'll just keep closing in. We need to disrupt their plans." Lena surveyed the gas station. "If we can get inside, we might be able to collapse part of the structure when they enter. Gas fumes could give us an explosive edge." Elias nodded. "Dax, Harper, find a way to rig the pumps. Lena, see if you can find anything flammable inside. I'll set up distractions. We need to split their forces." They moved fast. Dax and Harper worked the pumps, carefully loosening valves to let fumes spill into the air. Lena rummaged through the gas station's wreckage, finding old cans of lighter fluid, rags, and shattered glass to create makeshift firebombs. Meanwhile, Elias placed noise traps, metal debris tied to wires, anything that would create chaos when tripped. The first signs of their pursuers came minutes later. shadows moving between cars, the distant sound of whispering voices that weren't meant to be heard. "They're here," Harper whispered. Elias checked the final placement of the traps before signaling the others into position. "We draw them in, then light it up. No hesitation." Then the Whisperers arrived. The first one stepped into view, a tall, emaciated figure, its skin stretched thin over pulsing veins of fungal growth. Its eyes flickered with a strange intelligence as it scanned the area. Others followed, moving in perfect, eerie unison. Then, as if sensing the trap, they stopped. "They know something's wrong," Lena whispered. One of the Whisperers tilted its head, then let out a low, clicking sound. The drones emerged, dozens of them, pouring into the street. The team tensed. The trap had to spring now or not at all. "Dax, now!" Elias ordered. Dax didn't hesitate. He fired into the gas fumes, the bullet igniting an instant inferno. Flames roared through the station, consuming everything in their path. The explosion ripped through the ground, sending drones flying. The Whisperers recoiled, their coordination momentarily broken. "Move!" Elias shouted. The team scrambled away as the structure groaned and collapsed, burying several creatures beneath debris. Smoke and fire filled the streets, obscuring their escape route. But as they ran, Harper stole one last glance back and saw something chilling. One of the Whisperers stood beyond the flames, untouched. It wasn't running. It wasn't reacting in fear. It was smiling. "They'll come for us," she murmured. "This was just the beginning." Elias clenched his jaw. "Then we make sure we're ready." With the city burning behind them, they pushed onward toward Outpost Zero, knowing that the war had only just begun. The last mile. The city's ruins stretched behind them, smoke still curling into the sky from the remains of the gas station. The explosion had bought them time, but not enough. As the team moved swiftly through the dead landscape, the uneasy feeling of being watched settled over them like a suffocating fog. Elias kept his pace steady, scanning the horizon as they navigated the cracked asphalt. His gut told him something was wrong. The harvesters didn't give up this easily. Then Harper glanced over her shoulder and froze. "Elias, we've got a problem." He turned, his breath catching at the sight. A lone harvester was trailing them, its gaunt form gliding unnaturally through the wreckage. Unlike the drones they had encountered before, this one was patient. It didn't charge blindly. It stalked them. "Damn it," Dax muttered, tightening his grip on his rifle. "That thing has been following us for miles." Lena's voice was hushed but urgent. "It's studying us." "No time to deal with it now," Elias said. "We push forward. If it tries anything, we take it down." They moved faster, keeping their weapons ready. But the harvester didn't attack. It kept its distance, just beyond the range of their bullets, watching, waiting. The closer they got to Outpost Zero, the bolder it became, picking up speed, closing the gap inch by inch. Then they saw it. The walls of Outpost Zero loomed in the distance, a bastion of steel and concrete surrounded by towering gun emplacements. The sight filled them with renewed energy, but the harvester sensed it too. It lunged. "Run!" Elias roared. The team sprinted, the harvester shrieking behind them. It moved with terrifying speed, its elongated limbs clawing at the ground, propelling it forward with unnatural grace. It was closing the distance fast. Harper stumbled but caught herself, heart pounding as she pushed forward. Dax fired behind them, bullets tearing through the creature's flesh, but it didn't slow. The wounds closed almost instantly, the fungal network knitting itself back together as it gave chase. "Almost there!" Lena shouted as the outpost's massive doors came into view. The sentries on the watchtowers spotted them and reacted instantly. Spotlights illuminated the battlefield, and the sound of gunfire roared through the air. The harvester let out an inhuman screech as rounds tore through its body, the high-caliber rounds finally slowing its advance. "Keep moving! Don't stop!" Elias bellowed. With a final burst of speed, the team barreled toward the gates just as they groaned open. They dove through, boots hitting solid ground as alarms blared. The doors slammed shut behind them with a deafening clang. Outside, the harvester writhed under the onslaught of gunfire before finally collapsing, its body twitching before falling still. Elias lay on the ground, chest heaving, as silence settled over the team. The relief was short-lived. Harper wiped the sweat from her brow, her voice uneasy. "It wasn't just chasing us. It was testing us." Lena nodded, still catching her breath. "And now they know exactly how far we'll go to survive." Elias looked toward the dead harvester outside the walls, knowing this was far from over. "Then next time, we make sure they don't get the chance." As Outpost Zero's security team rushed forward, the weight of what lay ahead settled over them. The harvesters weren't just hunting, they were learning. The adrenaline still coursed through their veins, but for the first time in what felt like days, the team had a moment to breathe. Outpost Zero loomed around. Them, a testament to resilience in a world gone mad. It wasn't much, but it was home. Built on the remains of an old military base, Outpost Zero was as fortified as possible. The core of the outpost was the command bunker, an underground facility that had survived the collapse, now serving as the brain of operations. Above ground, the old armory and supply depot had been repurposed into a heavily guarded warehouse, stocked with weapons, ammunition, and rations. The medical facility, once a military barracks, had been transformed into a hospital, complete with a quarantine section and a crude research lab dedicated to understanding the virus. Surrounding these key buildings were rows of makeshift homes. Some survivors had managed to claim repurposed military barracks, while others lived in reinforced shipping containers, scavenged and modified for shelter. Only the newest arrivals or lower priority members still relied on tents. Security was tight. Double-layered perimeter walls, the outer made of scavenged metal and concrete, the inner reinforced with old military plating, enclosed the outpost. Guard towers stationed at every corner provided snipers a clear view of the surrounding wasteland. Automated floodlights scanned the perimeter. Motion-activated turrets were positioned near weak points, and layers of defensive traps, tripwires, trenches, and barricades made from salvaged vehicles ensured that nothing got in unnoticed. Elias led the team toward their quarters, a row of repurposed barracks near the center of the outpost. The exhaustion was beginning to set in, the weight of everything they had endured pressing down on them now that they had stopped moving. "Get some rest," he instructed, pulling off his gear and setting it down beside his cot. "We'll debrief in the morning." Dax collapsed onto his cot without a word, rubbing his face with both hands. Lena paced the room, her mind clearly still running through everything they had encountered. Harper, however, was already pulling out the recovered data drive, her eyes scanning the screen of a salvaged laptop. "Can't it wait?" Dax muttered, watching her from his cot. "We just got here." Harper shook her head. "We need to know what's on this drive. That harvester, it wasn't chasing us randomly. It was studying us, and if the others are learning, we're running out of time." Elias exhaled sharply but nodded. "Fine. Get some rest when you can. We'll talk to command in the morning." Lena finally stopped pacing. "I just hope whatever's on that drive gives us an edge, because if they're evolving, we need to be ready." As the night stretched on, the outpost hummed with quiet activity. Guards patrolled the perimeter. Scientists worked tirelessly in the research lab, and survivors did their best to cling to what little normalcy they had left. Outpost Zero stood strong, but for how much longer? The transmission. Elias sat at the head of the debriefing table, his fingers steepled beneath his chin as he watched Harper's screen flicker with lines of recovered data. The room was dimly lit, the hum of old generators the only sound, besides the occasional shift of fabric as someone adjusted in their seat. Across from him, Captain Renford, the head of Outpost Zero, studied the information with a hardened gaze. The air was thick with tension. "Let's start from the top," Renford said, arms crossed. "What the hell did you bring back?" Harper exhaled, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. "A pattern," she said. "The harvesters aren't just spreading, they're targeting Dot. Look here." She brought up a map, a series of red dots marking the locations of known survivor outposts. Some were labeled, but others were faded and grayed out. "These outposts have gone silent in the last 2 months. Not all at once, not in a wave, strategically. The harvesters are wiping them out methodically, forming a perimeter. They're herding survivors, forcing them into confined spaces. That means they're thinking," Elias finished grimly. Renford frowned, his jaw tightening. Could be coincidence. Could be. "It's not," Harper cut in, tapping a few keys. The screen shifted to an audio waveform, jagged and uneven. "Remember the tapping sounds we recorded in the facility? I ran them through a decryption algorithm. It's not just noise. It's a language. The harvesters are communicating, coordinating their movements." A silence settled over the room, heavier than the air in the wasteland beyond their walls. Lena leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "So what? They're just talking? Planning attacks? To what end? They don't build, they don't farm, they don't need resources." Harper's lips thinned as she hesitated. That's where it gets worse. She hesitated before clicking one final file open. The screen shifted again, this time revealing a string of encrypted transmissions. "This isn't from the research facility," she said quietly. "This is still broadcasting, right now. It's an old government frequency coming from deep in the wastelands. The signal has been transmitting for years. And here's the kicker." She took a breath. "The harvesters' tapping patterns? They match portions of this transmission. Whatever is out there, the harvesters are listening to it, maybe even responding." Dax straightened in his chair. "You're telling me something is out there still sending signals, and the damn monsters understand it?" "Not just understand it," Elias murmured. "They might be acting on it." Renford pushed away from the table, pacing. "So now we have missing outposts, talking monsters, and a mystery signal that's been active since before the outbreak." He turned to Elias. "Your team has a choice. Do we track down the lost outposts, or do we go after that signal? Because I don't like sitting here waiting to be the next red dot on that map." Elias exchanged looks with Lena, Dax, and Harper. They had just barely escaped their last mission alive. But if they didn't act, Outpost Zero might not be here much longer. "Give us an hour," Elias said. "We'll make our decision." And in the back of his mind, a terrible thought clawed its way forward. What if whoever sent that transmission was still out there? And what if the harvesters weren't just following it, but obeying it? The choice. Elias stood near the center of the war room, the map of the wastelands laid out on a metal table before him. The air was thick with quiet tension as he, Lena, Harper, and Dax considered their next move. Their recent findings had turned everything they knew about the harvesters upside down, and the weight of their decision loomed over them like a storm. Harper was the first to speak. "If we go after the lost outposts, we risk running into whatever wiped them out. We don't know if there are survivors left or if they've already been taken. But the signal? It's active. That means someone or something is still out there. Dax crossed his arms, his expression hard. Yeah, but let's say we go after the signal. What if it's a trap? What if that thing has been broadcasting for years because it's leading survivors right into the harvester's hands? His voice was edged with frustration. Hell, what if it's calling them? Lena exhaled sharply. We have no proof of that, Dax. We also have no proof that those missing outposts are completely wiped out. Either choice comes with risk. We just have to decide which one gives us the best chance of fighting back. Elias stared at the map, his mind running through every possible scenario. Going after the lost outposts might give us more survivors, but at what cost? If the harvesters are targeting them strategically, it means we'd be walking into a battlefield we don't understand. The signal, on the other hand, it's been going for years. If it's still broadcasting, that means it's coming from a working facility. If it has power, it might have resources, food, weapons, maybe even information on how this all started. Harper nodded. If we find the source, we might even figure out why the harvesters are responding to it. And if we can do that, we might be able to predict their movements, maybe even disrupt them. Dax let out a slow breath, rubbing the back of his head. Fine. But if we do this, we need to be smart about it. This isn't just some scavenging run. This is deep wasteland territory. We need more supplies, better weapons, and backup in case things go sideways. Elias turned to Lena. What's your take? Lena's gaze was steady. I think this is our best shot at getting ahead of them. We can't keep reacting to the harvesters. We need to understand them. If this signal gives us any kind of advantage, we have to take it. Elias nodded, the decision settling over him. Then it's decided? We go after the signal. But before we leave, we need to talk to Renford and the other leaders. Outpost Zero isn't safe. Not with what we know now. We need to reinforce our defenses, fortify the perimeter, and prepare for an attack. Because if we're right about all of this, the harvesters are just getting started. As the team exited the war room, a sense of finality hung in the air. The mission ahead would be their most dangerous yet. And as much as Elias wanted to believe they were making the right call, a nagging thought lingered in the back of his mind. What if they weren't the only ones hunting the signal? The wasteland stretched in all directions, a graveyard of broken cities and skeletal forests. Beneath the ruins, in the hollowed remains of an old metro system, the Hive, pulsed with unnatural life. Deep in the tunnels, the walls writhed, slick with a shifting mass of pale mycelium. The fungal tendrils pulsed like veins, feeding off the moisture and decay, stretching further into the world above. The air was thick with spores, swirling in ghostly patterns, carrying with them something unseen, something alive. A harvester crouched at the edge of the chamber, its body still, listening. Its skin, marbled with deep black veins, twitched as the hive murmured through it. Others stood nearby, dozens, maybe hundreds, their bodies swaying in unison as if bound by a silent rhythm. Their empty eyes blinked in erratic, unnatural patterns. They were not mindless. They were waiting. A sound rippled through the tunnels. The tapping, slow, rhythmic. An unseen force guiding them, whispering through the network of fungal growth that connected them all. The harvesters turned their heads in eerie synchronization, their mouths moving without sound, as if speaking to something only they could hear. Above them, in the ruins of a collapsed hospital, something shifted. The mycelium-covered walls bulged outward before splitting open, releasing a new form, a towering creature, its limbs elongated, its fingers stretching into claw-like tendrils. Its head twitched as it took its first breath, inhaling the heavy spores. It listened, cocking its head as the tapping guided its purpose. A command. The harvesters moved. The tunnels became a churning mass of bodies, moving as one, flowing through the underground veins of the city. They moved with purpose, no longer shambling creatures of hunger, but a force of terrifying precision. Above them, the surface world was unaware. Outpost Zero was unaware. The hive was growing, and soon it would be unstoppable. The hive unleashed. The town of Brantley had been silent for months, its streets filled with rusting cars and the remnants of a world long past. Once a small survivor settlement, it had been abandoned after too many supply runs ended in blood. But tonight, it was no longer empty. The air was thick with spores, swirling in the moonlight as the first harvester stepped onto the cracked pavement. Its head twitched, nostrils flaring as if scenting something unseen. Behind it, more emerged from the shadows. Dozens, then hundreds. They moved without hesitation, their bodies eerily coordinated, their skin shifting as if the fungus beneath pulsed with a mind of its own. Then came the new ones. Unlike the others, they moved differently, faster, more deliberate. Their limbs were longer, more refined, their eyes sharp and calculating. Their skin was a sickly, pale gray, the fungal growths forming hard, chitinous plating along their arms and torsos. These were not just harvesters. They were evolutions. A low vibration rippled through the streets, the hive's signal, an unspoken command that only they could hear. The creatures split into formations, moving into alleyways, entering buildings, checking every crevice. They weren't just spreading, they were hunting. In the center of town, a single house still stood. A weak candle flickered in the window. A survivor. The nearest harvester's head snapped toward the light. Then, all at once, they rushed forward. The wooden door splintered instantly. A scream rang out, but it was brief, cut off as the swarm flooded inside. The candle fell, sending embers scattering across the floor, but the fire would never have a chance to spread. The walls were already being consumed, thick veins of mycelium crawling over the wood, pulsing, spreading, digesting. The house, the survivor, everything, absorbed into the hive. And then, as suddenly as they had come, the harvesters turned. Their heads tilted in unison, listening to something distant, something calling. Without a sound, they moved as one, vanishing into the night. The hive was no longer just growing, it was organizing, and nothing in its path would survive. Outpost Zero was a flurry of movement as the team finalized their preparations. The tension in the air was thick. This mission wasn't just dangerous, it was unprecedented. No one had ventured this deep into harvester territory and returned. Elias stood over a map of the region, his fingers tracing the potential routes. We'll travel light. We have to be fast, avoid confrontation. If we get pinned down, we're dead. Lena adjusted the straps on her pack, glancing at the supplies scattered across the table. We're barely taking enough for a week. If anything goes wrong, we're stranded. Everything about this mission is a gamble, Harper muttered as she checked the battery packs for the portable data scanner. We don't even know what we're walking into. Dax leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching them. That's why we have to be smart. Stick to the plan. No heroics. If we get what we need, we're out. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of it settling over them. They had survived against the odds before, but this was different. The hive was changing. Personal moments before departure. Later that night, as the final checks were made, Elias sat alone near the watchtower, staring out over the dark horizon. Lena approached, setting a small tin cup of lukewarm coffee beside him. "You look like you're carrying the weight of this whole place on your shoulders." He exhaled. "Aren't I? If we don't come back." Lena sat beside him. "We will. But if you keep thinking like that, you'll freeze when it counts. I need you focused." "We all do." Elias gave a small nod, gripping the cup but not drinking. "And if we come back to nothing, if the hive reaches this place before we do?" Lena didn't have an answer. Neither did he. Across the outpost, Harper and Dax sat by the supply depot, checking weapons and gear. "So what's the first thing you'll do when we get back?" Harper asked. Dax smirked. "Assuming we do? I'm sleeping for a week, and if there's still whiskey left, I'm drinking it. You?" Harper shrugged. "I just want to know the truth about all of this, about what we're really up against." Dax's smirk faded. "Careful. Truth isn't always what you want it to be." Morning came too soon. As the gates of Outpost Zero groaned open, the team stepped into the wasteland, the first leg of their journey beginning. Behind them, the outpost stood strong. For now. Into the wasteland. The landscape beyond Outpost Zero was an unforgiving ruin of the old world. Crumbling highways stretched into the distance, overtaken by creeping vegetation and fungal spires that pulsed faintly under the morning light. The team moved in a tight formation, silent except for the crunch of debris beneath their boots. Every step took them deeper into harvester territory. Elias led the way, rifle in hand, eyes constantly scanning. He had traveled these roads before, but never this far out. The air was thick with spores, swirling lazily in the breeze, clinging to their gear like parasites. "Keep your masks tight," Lena murmured, adjusting the seal on hers. "Last thing we need is exposure this early." Harper checked the scanner strapped to her forearm, watching as the biosignature readings flickered. So far, nothing. But that doesn't mean they aren't watching. Dax walked at the rear, pausing every few moments to glance over his shoulder. They always are. Signs of the hive. An hour in, they came across the first sign of the hive's reach. A small convoy of rusted-out vehicles, their windows shattered, their metal frames warped and tangled with thick tendrils of fungal growth. Bones lay scattered around the wreckage, brittle and darkened, half consumed by creeping mycelium. Lena crouched beside a skeleton, running a gloved hand along what remained of the ribcage. This isn't fresh, but it's not old either. They were here recently. Elias moved to the driver's side of one of the vehicles, brushing away the grime on the windshield. Handprints, smudged and desperate, dragged across the glass. Not everyone died here. Someone tried to get out. Harper swallowed hard. Did they? No one answered. Shifting terrain. By midday, the terrain had changed. The skeletal remains of the city loomed ahead, buildings broken and leaning, their steel bones jutting toward the sky. The air was heavier here, thicker with an unnatural humidity. "Feels like a trap," Dax muttered. Elias nodded. "It probably is." They moved carefully, staying within the shadows of the collapsed infrastructure. The deeper they went, the more the city felt alive. Strange clicking sounds echoed through the empty streets. Shapes shifted in the distant fog. Harper's scanner beeped. Movement detected. "How many?" Elias asked. Harper's face paled as the display updated. "Too many." The hive was here, and it was waiting. The swarm awakens. The team froze as the scanner continued its steady beeping. Harper tapped at the screen, trying to refine the reading, But the numbers only grew worse. They weren't alone. Elias raised a fist, signaling for the others to take cover. They moved swiftly, pressing themselves against the half-collapsed husks of old buildings, rifles aimed at the fog-laced streets ahead. Then the sound came. A low, resonant clicking, faint at first, like insects stirring beneath the earth. Then it multiplied, growing into an eerie, layered chittering that reverberated through the abandoned cityscape. Dax's grip tightened on his rifle. "I don't like this." "Movement on the right," Lena whispered, peering around a corner. "Fast." Before Elias could give the order to fall back, the silence shattered. From the shadows of a crumbling overpass, they came. Harvesters, more than a dozen, their emaciated frames twisted with fungal growth, their hollow eyes locked onto the team. Their movements were erratic, twitching with unnatural speed. Some crawled along the walls, their elongated fingers digging into concrete like insects skittering from the light. Others moved on two legs, their heads tilting in unnatural jerks as they inhaled the team's scent. One of them let out a sound, not a growl, not a scream, but something worse. A signal. The clicking around them escalated. "Run!" Elias barked. A desperate escape. The team sprinted through the ruins, boots slamming against broken pavement. The harvesters pursued with terrifying speed, their limbs propelling them forward with unnatural grace. Dax fired behind him, dropping one, but two more took its place. "They're too fast! We need to lose them!" Lena pointed toward an overturned bus ahead. "Through there." Elias led the charge, leaping onto the bus's side and pulling himself through a shattered window. The others followed, scrambling over torn seats and broken glass. The creatures swarmed the outside, their clawed hands reaching in, their hollow whispers hissing through the gaps. Harper fumbled with a grenade, yanking the pin. "Move!" They dove out the far exit just as the explosion rocked the bus, sending flaming debris into the night. Smoke and fire engulfed the street behind them, cutting off the swarm, at least for now. Gasping for breath, Elias steadied himself against a wall. "We need to keep moving. They'll be back." Lena wiped sweat from her brow. "And next time, they won't just be chasing us. They'll be hunting." No safe haven. The team moved quickly, exhaustion setting in as they pushed deeper into the ruins. The adrenaline from their escape had worn off, leaving their bodies aching and their breaths ragged. Elias knew they couldn't keep running. They needed shelter, even if only for a few hours. "We'll rest there," he said, pointing to a partially collapsed department store, its shattered windows and sagging roof barely holding together. "Just long enough to regroup." Dax didn't look convinced. "Feels like a bad idea." "Everything out here is a bad idea," Lena muttered, checking the door before slipping inside. The interior was a wasteland of forgotten lives. Dust-covered mannequins stood like ghosts in the dim light, their cracked faces turned toward the intruders. Racks of rotting clothes hung in tatters, and the floor was littered with debris from long-forgotten looters. Harper scanned the room with her flashlight. "No movement. Looks clear." They barricaded themselves in the back storage room, stacking overturned shelves against the doors. It wasn't perfect, but it would have to do. Elias exhaled, rubbing his temples. "We'll rest in shifts. Harper, see if you can get any readings on your scanner. Lena, check supplies. Dax, you're with me on first watch." They nodded, settling in. For the first time in what felt like days, they allowed themselves a moment to breathe. Dax sat near the door, rifle resting across his lap. The silence in the store was oppressive, thick with the weight of things unseen. He shifted, uneasy. "Something doesn't feel right." Elias glanced at him. It never does. Then he heard it. A faint, dragging sound from somewhere inside the store. Slow, deliberate, like something pulling itself across the floor. Harper's scanner beeped once. Movement detected. The room went still. Lena gripped her knife. That wasn't there before. The dragging sound came again, closer this time. And then, a whisper. Not words, not human. Dax lifted his rifle, sweat beading on his brow. We need to move. Now. Something thumped against the storage room door. Once. Then twice. Then silence. Elias raised his weapon, heart pounding. The others did the same. Then, from the other side of the barricade, a voice. Warped, hollow, and wrong. Let me in. Silence hung in the air like a blade poised to drop. The team held their breath as the voice from the other side of the barricade whispered again, more clearly this time. Let me in. Elias gritted his teeth, his mind racing. Harvesters didn't speak. Not like this. They mimicked, they repeated, but they didn't think. Lena kept her weapon raised, eyes locked on the barricaded door. That's not normal. No, Elias admitted. It's not. A long pause. Then the voice came again. Slow, deliberate, and pleading. Please. Help. Dax shook his head. Number nope. Absolutely not. We shoot it, and we move. But Harper's fingers hovered over her scanner, eyes wide as. She watched the readings. Wait, this one's different. It's not linked to the others. It's... She hesitated, glancing up. Alone. The weight of that word sank deep. Elias didn't lower his gun, but he took a step closer. Who are you? Silence, save for a shallow, rasping breath beyond the door. Then was Doctor. Lena's fingers tightened on her rifle. Doctor? As in, before? The voice stuttered, the words breaking like static. Was before. Now. Not. Still. Here. Me? A chill ran down Elias' spine. The thing beyond the door. It remembered. What do you want? He asked cautiously. The pause dragged long enough to make them question if it was still there. Then, at last, it answered, Hive. Coming. Soon. Need. Stop. Need. Help. Harper swallowed hard. Elias, I think we need to let it in. Dax turned to her like she'd lost her mind. Are you serious? That thing isn't coming in unless it's in pieces. Elias wasn't sure what terrified him more, the thought of letting it in, or the idea that it might actually be telling the truth. Then the voice, broken, desperate, spoke again. More than you know. More than you see. Let me in. The choice had to be made, and fast. Between two worlds. The moment the door cracked open, an unnatural stillness filled the air. The dim light cast long shadows across the floor, stretching toward the hunched figure just beyond the threshold. Elias felt the weight of every decision leading to this moment pressing against his chest. His grip on his rifle tightened. The others held their breath, waiting. A rasping voice, cracked and trembling, slithered into the room. Let me in. Please, I can help. It wasn't the mindless, guttural moan of a harvester. It was desperate, almost human. Elias swallowed hard. He shouldn't even be considering this. No one had ever seen a harvester act like this, speak like this. And yet, something in the way it pleaded made the hairs on his arms stand on end. Lena took a slow step forward. Elias, what if... No. Dax cut her off, his voice sharp, rifle raised. This is a trap. You don't negotiate with these things. Harper, standing by the terminal, hesitated, her fingers hovering over the door controls. She glanced at the scanner. The Hive isn't tracking this one. Elias flinched. That meant it wasn't linked to the collective. A stray? A broken connection? He took a cautious step forward, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Cole. A flicker of recognition. The shadowed figure twitched at the name, shifting slightly into the dim light. A face, contorted, desperate, emerged. Once human, now something else. I was... before. The voice rasped, fractured and full of something deeply unsettling. I remember. I can help. Please. The team exchanged glances. The distant shrieks of other harvesters sent a chill down Elias's spine. Time was slipping away. Dax shook his head, voice dark. This is a mistake. We don't have a choice, Elias countered. If it wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. He turned to Harper. Open it. Just enough. Harper's hands trembled, but she obeyed. The door creaked as it slid open just a sliver, enough for the creature to step inside. Dr. Cole moved carefully. His twisted body was hunched, fingers twitching, his skin mottled with fungal growths. But his eyes, they weren't dead. They were watching, calculating, terrified. Elias felt the breath hitch in his throat. Prove to us you're not one of them. Dr. Cole's lips cracked into something resembling a smile. You're still stubborn, Elias, just like in the lab. Elias's blood ran cold. That was something only a human could know. Before anyone could react, a distant screech echoed outside, then another, and another. The walls shuddered as something massive slammed into the barricade. The harvesters had found them. Then everything exploded into chaos. The front entrance burst open, sending debris flying across the room. Figures, twisted, unnatural, poured in like a flood of nightmare fuel. Move! Dax barked, already raising his rifle. Gunfire erupted, lighting up the dark. The first harvester lunged, its fungal maw splitting open, but Elias fired first, dropping it in a heap. More clambered over its body, undeterred. Lena ducked behind an overturned shelf, picking them off one by one. Harper jammed a new mag into her pistol, firing wildly. And then Dr. Cole moved. It was fast, precise. Not like them. He grabbed a rusted pipe from the debris and struck with surgical efficiency, cracking a harvester's skull with the exact force needed to kill. Another lunged, and he sidestepped with inhuman reflexes, jamming the pipe into its throat. Elias's pulse slammed in his ears. This was different. This wasn't blind aggression. This was skill. A man who still knew exactly where to strike. Dr. Cole turned, locking eyes with Elias, his voice raw. They're coming faster. We have to go, now. A harvester lunged for Harper, but Cole moved first. He grabbed a shard of glass from a broken shelf and drove it into the creature's neck with perfect precision. The harvester convulsed before crumpling to the floor. Lena gasped. He's fighting with us. Dax wasn't convinced. He aimed his rifle at Dr. Cole. Yeah, for now. The moans outside grew deafening. More were coming. They were out of time. Elias clenched his jaw, heart pounding. This was insane. This was impossible. But Dr. Cole was helping them, fighting alongside them, proving with every brutal, calculated strike that he wasn't just another monster. Or at least, not entirely. Elias made his decision. We're leaving. Together. Dax cursed under his breath but didn't lower his gun. Dr. Cole stepped forward, his breathing ragged. There's more. About the hive. I can tell you. His gaze flicked toward the shattered door. But if we stay, we die. Elias exhaled sharply. He turned to the others. We move. Now, no one argued. With one last glance at the horde flooding the store, the team sprinted for the back exit. Dr. Cole followed, his movements eerily fluid, his breath sharp with something between pain and purpose. They didn't stop running. And as the screams of the harvesters faded behind them, one thing became terrifyingly clear. Dr. Cole was something new. Not fully human, not fully harvester. And whether he was their ally or their greatest mistake remained to be seen. The team stumbles through the ruined streets, exhaustion dragging at their bodies. Blood, some of it their own, some of it not, sticks to their clothes. The night. Air is thick, heavy with the scent of rot and gunpowder. The only sound is their hurried footsteps and the distant, eerie hum of the hive. Dr. Cole moves ahead of them, eerily silent for someone in his condition. The fungal growths on his body shift with each step, and though he still looks monstrous, there's something unmistakably human in his posture. Dax keeps his rifle trained on him, never letting him out of sight. I still don't trust this thing. No choice, Elias mutters. Unless you want to take your chances out here. Dr. Cole suddenly stops. His head tilts slightly, listening to something none of them can hear. Then he points toward an old, half-destroyed subway station covered in vines and fungal overgrowth. There, he says. Underground. The hive's influence is weaker there. Harper scoffs. Why? Scared of the dark? Dr. Cole slowly turns his head toward her, his hollow, sunken eyes catching the dim moonlight. Number, but they are. The team exchanges uneasy glances, but Elias makes the call. We don't have time to argue. Move. They descend into the darkness, flashlights cutting through the stale air. The tunnels stretch endlessly, walls slick with moisture and decay. It's silent. Too silent. Finally, they reach an abandoned service room. Reinforced metal doors, old equipment, and signs that people once took shelter here before the world fell apart. It's not ideal, but it's something. Lena wastes no time. All right, she says, turning to Dr. Cole. You want us to trust you? Start talking. Dr. Cole hesitates for the briefest moment. Then he exhales. A slow, human-like action, as if gathering his thoughts. And then he drops the bombshell. The hive isn't just evolving. It's preparing for something. Something worse than anything you've seen. Silence. Elias feels a chill creep up his spine. What do you mean? Dr. Cole's fingers twitch, the fungal tendrils in his arms shifting unnaturally. You think the hive is just trying to assimilate survivors? You're wrong. It's been learning, gathering everything it needs. And now, he slowly lifts his gaze, voice hollow. Now it's building something. The words settle like a stone in Elias's stomach. Dax narrows his eyes. Building what? Dr. Cole's mouth opens, but before he can answer, the tunnel shakes. A deep, distant rumbling. Something massive is moving above them. The sound is unlike any harvester they've heard before. Heavier, deeper, unnatural. The vibrations rattle their bones, dust raining from the ceiling. Harper's voice comes out barely above a whisper. What the hell was that? Dr. Cole's head snaps toward the noise. The fungal growths along his neck pulse. It knows where we are. And then, a new sound. a guttural, inhuman screech, not like the usual harvesters. This is deeper, more resonant, vibrating through the walls like a death knell. Something is coming. Something big. Tunnel run. As the survivors sprint deeper into the tunnel, the deafening tremors intensify. The walls groan under the immense pressure of whatever is above, and then, boom, the entrance behind them erupts in a cloud of dust and debris. Through the haze, the silhouettes of harvesters appear, dozens of them, their twisted forms illuminated by the flickering emergency lights. They screech and charge forward, their bodies contorting unnaturally as they squeeze through the narrowing passage. Gunfire erupts as Dax and Elias fire into the swarm, cutting some of them down, but there are too many. Then, a deep, bone-rattling growl reverberates through the tunnel. The survivors steal a glance back, just in time to see it. The massive, armored lieutenant looms at the entrance, its glowing, fungal-veined eyes locked onto them. It doesn't rush in like the others. Instead, it pushes forward, attempting to force its enormous body through the narrow tunnel. Its sheer bulk cracks the concrete, sending large chunks crashing down. The ground shakes violently. And then, the collapse. The tunnel entrance caves in with a thunderous roar, swallowing the lieutenant in a cascade of rubble. A cloud of dust billows toward the survivors as the walls behind them seal shut, entombing the pursuing harvesters beneath tons of rock and debris. Silence follows. Only the distant sound of settling rubble remains. Lena coughs, waving away the dust. Did we just? Elias doesn't answer, his pulse still hammering. Harper shines her flashlight toward the wreckage, her voice shaky. It's blocked off, but not dead. That thing's not dead. Dax exhales sharply, adjusting his rifle. No. But we bought ourselves time. With no other choice, the group presses forward into the unknown depths of the tunnel, their footsteps the only sound in the oppressive darkness. They need to find safety before whatever is left behind finds them first. Underground refuge. The team stumbles into an abandoned subway maintenance room, the stale air thick with dust and rust. A dim emergency light flickers in the corner, barely illuminating the cracked walls. The echoes of collapsing rubble still ring in their ears. They've escaped. Barely. Lena is the first to act, pulling out the medkit. Dax winces as she wraps his arm, where a jagged piece of metal grazed him during the escape. Harper, still shaking, runs a quick diagnostic on her hacked tablet, checking for signs of infection. They're all clear. This time. Elias leans against the wall, breathing heavily. His hands shake as he reloads his rifle. The weight of what just happened bears down on him. Harper breaks the silence. That thing, it was different. Smarter. Stronger. It just stood there, like it was thinking before it moved. Dax shakes his head, jaw clenched. It wasn't just controlling them, it was coordinating them, like a damn general sending troops into battle. Lena looks at Dr. Cole, who has been eerily quiet. You said you didn't know what it was, but you've seen the harvesters evolve before. What do you think we're dealing with? Dr. Cole finally speaks, his voice hoarse. This was intentional. It's not just an evolution. It's a design. The Hive created something new. A lieutenant. A war leader. A heavy silence settles over the room. Dr. Cole exhales sharply, his expression dark. You want to know why the Hive is making things like this? You already know the answer. It's not just hunting survivors anymore, it's organizing, expanding. Elias watches him carefully. Expanding how? Dr. Cole hesitates, then speaks the words that make everyone's stomach drop. It's preparing for the next stage, full-scale war. Lena swallows hard. That means it's not just turning humans into harvesters anymore. It's building an army to wipe us out. Dax runs a hand down his face. So what? If that thing was their lieutenant, what the hell else do they have waiting for us? No one has an answer. Harper suddenly slams her tablet shut, her voice shaking. I don't know how much more of this I can take. Every time we fight, they get stronger. Every time we run, they find us. How the hell do we even win against something like this? Dax glares. We don't have a choice. We either fight, or we end up just like them. Lena interjects, desperate for reason. And that's why we have to stick to the plan. The signal, the one controlling them, we still don't know what it's doing or why. That's why we went underground in the first place. We have to make it to that facility and shut it down. Elias straightens up, his expression grim but determined. Lena's right. If this thing is controlling the harvesters, we take it out and we cripple their command structure. We delay whatever this war is before it starts. A long pause. Then, slowly, everyone nods. Their goal is clear. Reach the facility. Destroy the signal. Survive. The first rays of daylight cast long shadows across the ruined cityscape as Elias and the others navigated through the crumbling streets. The night in the tunnels had been restless, but it had granted them a temporary reprieve. Now, they were exposed once more, moving through the skeletal remains of a civilization lost to the harvesters. Dax led the way, his eyes scanning the rooftops and alleyways for movement. Harper was next, muttering about how much she hated open ground. Lena and Elias followed close behind, both tense but determined. The facility in the mountains was still miles away, but every step toward it felt like wading deeper into uncertainty. A sudden crack split the air. A bullet struck the pavement inches from Dax's boot, kicking up dust and sending the team scrambling for cover. "Sniper!" Dax barked, pressing himself against the side of a rusted-out car. Harper dove behind a broken concrete barrier, her eyes wide with panic. From above, a voice rang out, harsh and edged with suspicion. "Who the hell are you, bringing those things here?" Elias peered cautiously from behind a chunk of debris, his gaze following the sound. High up, in the remains of a 5-story office building, a dark figure loomed behind a shattered window. The sniper had the high ground, the advantage. Dax clenched his jaw, gripping his rifle. "You get a bead on him?" "Yeah," Harper whispered, "but he's got a bead on us too." The voice came again, sharper this time. "Answer me. That horde, was it chasing you?" Lena raised a cautious hand, trying to de-escalate. "Look, we're just passing through. We don't want trouble." "Everyone wants trouble whether they mean to or not." The sniper's voice was cold, calculating. Elias took a breath, stepping slightly into view. "We're not here to bring harvesters down on you. We're heading for the mountains, for that facility. We just want to survive." A tense silence stretched between them. Then, another shot. This one hit closer, just above Elias's head, forcing him back. "Keep your distance or I'll kill you where you stand. Answer my questions, and I'll decide if I let you live." Harper muttered under her breath, "Oh, he sounds fun." Dax's muscles tensed, but Elias motioned for everyone to hold. This wasn't just some trigger-happy lunatic. This was someone who had survived alone for a long time, someone who didn't trust easily. Elias locked eyes on the figure in the window and chose his words carefully. "You already know we're not infected, or you wouldn't be talking. You saw that horde, so you know why we ran. We're just trying to stay alive. Same as you." Another long pause. Then, finally, The sniper, Knox Turner, spoke again, this time with less immediate hostility. "Stay where you are." They heard movement from inside the building. He was coming down. Dax exhaled, gripping his weapon tighter. "Great. Let's see if this guy's the shoot-first type or the paranoid but reasonable type." Harper sighed. "My money's on both." The team waited, the weight of the moment pressing down on them as the lone survivor approached. Face to face with Knox. Then Knox stepped into the open. He was tall, wiry, wearing patchwork survival gear that had been reinforced over time. His rifle was still in his hands, but it wasn't aimed yet. His sharp eyes scanned the group, assessing, calculating. Then his gaze landed on Dr. Cole. His entire body stiffened. "What the hell is that?" Knox's voice was colder now, filled with something that hadn't been there before. Outright hostility. Dax moved instinctively, stepping in front of Dr. Cole. "She's with us." Knox's rifle snapped up instantly. "That's not a she. That's one of them." Elias held up his hands, trying to defuse the situation. "She's different. She's not part of the hive anymore." "Bullshit." Knox's finger tensed on the trigger. His breathing was steady, his stance unwavering. This wasn't fear. This was certainty. "I've seen what those things can do. You're telling me you gotta tame one? That it's not leading you right into a trap?" Dr. Cole took a step forward, her expression unreadable. "I know what I am." Her voice was calm, deliberate. "And I know what the hive is. I can help you fight it." Knox let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "Help? You think I'd trust the word of a damn harvester? I've watched those things tear people apart, trick them, mimic their voices. They don't help, they consume." Lena spoke up, her voice urgent. "She saved our lives, more than once. We wouldn't be here without her." Knox's jaw tightened, the weight of his past evident in his hardened gaze. Elias took a cautious step forward. "We're not asking you to trust her. Just trust us for now. We need to get to that facility. We're running out of time." Knox didn't lower his rifle, but his grip eased slightly. His eyes flicked from Elias to Dr. Cole, the gears in his head turning. Finally, after a long pause, he lowered his weapon just a little. "Fine. But if she so much as twitches wrong, I put her down myself." Dax's grip on his rifle tightened. "You'd have to go through us first." Knox's lips curled into a humorless smirk. "Then let's hope it doesn't come to that." The tension remained, thick and suffocating, but for now, the standoff was over. Knox stepped back toward the ruined building's entrance and jerked his head toward the door. "Get inside. Now." Elias didn't hesitate. They had spent too long in the open already. Knox shelter and mountain warning. The group follows Knox inside the crumbling building, their boots crunching against debris. The air is stale, thick with the scent of old paper and dust. Knox leads them up a narrow staircase to a room that's been converted into a makeshift hideout. A faded tarp covers a shattered window, softening the morning light. The space is minimal: a bedroll in the corner, a few scavenged supplies stacked neatly in crates, and a long-range rifle resting against the wall. A small fire pit sits in the center, a bundle of charred wood hinting at its last use. Knox doesn't sit. Instead, he moves to the far side of the room, positioning himself near a shelf with a direct line of sight to Dr. Cole. His rifle stays slung across his chest, his fingers never far from the trigger. Every movement he makes is deliberate, calculated. He crouches near one of the crates, pulling out several cans of beans. Without a word, he tosses one to each of them. "Eat." Elias hesitates before popping open the can. The others follow suit, grateful for something more than ration bars. Knox leans against the wall, arms crossed, eyes flicking between them, but never leaving Dr. Cole for long. So, the old facility. You really think shutting down that signal will change anything? Elias wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. We know the signal is affecting the harvesters. It's keeping them coordinated. If we take it out, we might be able to throw them into chaos. Buy time. Knox exhales through his nose, shaking his head. Maybe. But you're not just fighting them. Dax looks up. What do you mean? Knox's expression hardens. He grabs a map from the crate and spreads it out on the floor. It's old, marked with handwritten notes and scratches. I've been watching that place for months. Can't get close, not without drawing attention. But the harvesters aren't the only things out there. He taps his finger against a ridgeline on the map. Something moves in the mountains at night. Something big. You won't see it coming until it's too late. Harper stops mid-bite. Define big. Knox shakes his head. No clue what it is. I've only heard it. And trust me, you don't want to be in its path when it moves. Trees snap like twigs. The ground shakes. And anything in the area? Gone by morning. A heavy silence settles over the group. Lena swallows hard. You think it's another harvester? Knox hesitates. Don't know. Could be something worse. Dr. Cole, who has remained quiet, finally speaks. Her voice is calm, but laced with certainty. The signal inside that facility isn't just keeping the harvesters coordinated. It's controlling them, giving them orders. Knox's head snaps toward her, his posture shifting instantly. His fingers tighten on his rifle. Giving them orders? Are they giving you orders too? His voice is sharp, accusation burning behind every word. Dr. Cole meets his gaze without flinching. Number I severed my connection to the hive. If I hadn't, I wouldn't be standing here. Knox lets out a harsh breath, taking a slow step toward her, keeping just enough distance to react if needed. And I'm just supposed to believe that? That the hive just let you go? Dax tenses, subtly shifting his weight, ready to intervene. She's not one of them anymore. Knox huffs a humorless laugh. That's what you tell yourselves? Because you need to believe it? Dr. Cole's jaw tightens, but she doesn't break eye contact. Believe whatever you want, but that signal is how the hive spreads its influence. If we don't stop it, you won't just be hearing things in the mountains. You'll be hearing them everywhere. Knox stares at her for a long, tense moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he exhales sharply, turning back to the map. Then you better hope you're right. Because if you're not, none of us are making it out of there alive. The room remains thick with unease, but Knox doesn't lower his guard. Not yet, and Dr. Cole knows he won't anytime soon. Knox rolls up the map and shoves it into his pack. He sighs, rubbing the back of his neck before looking at the group. Damn it. His voice is low, reluctant. If I let you walk out there alone, you're dead before sunset. Dax smirks. Nice to see you care. Knox glares at him. I don't, but I've been watching that facility long enough to know it's suicide if you go in blind. Elias nods. So, you're coming with us? Knox huffs. I'll keep my distance. You do what you need to do, and I'll make sure you don't get yourselves killed before you get there. Lena tilts her head. Why not just stick with us? Knox's jaw tightens. I don't do groups. Groups are slow, loud. They get you killed. His eyes flick to Dax. And some of you make easy targets. Dax steps forward, but Elias places a hand on his chest, stopping him. Fine. Keep your distance. But if things go bad, we're going to need you. Knox picks up his rifle and slings it over his shoulder. They already will. You just don't know it yet. He walks toward the door and stops, looking back over his shoulder. We leave in 10. I hope you're faster than you look. The group moves out as the sun sits high in the sky, casting long shadows across the ruined city. Knox leads the way from a distance, his rifle at the ready, his movements sharp and practiced. As they leave the cracked pavement behind, the wilderness takes over. Nature has reclaimed the land. Thick roots coil over broken roads, vines strangle abandoned cars, and the sound of civilization is replaced by the eerie hum of the forest. Lena pulls her jacket closer. It's too quiet. Elias nods. No birds, no insects. He exhales, his breath fogging in the cool air. That's not normal. Knox, a few yards ahead, raises a hand, a silent signal to stop. The group freezes as he kneels by something on the ground. Harper inches closer. What is it? Knox doesn't answer at first. He lifts a half-eaten deer carcass, its ribs cracked open, the flesh torn in long, uneven strips. What's left of the meat is blackened and covered in fungal growth. Dax grips his gun tighter. Harvesters? Knox shakes his head. No. He points to the body. See these? Claw marks. Sharp, precise. Harvesters don't hunt like this. They don't eat like this. Lena swallows hard. Then what does? Knox scans the treetops, his eyes narrow. Something that doesn't like to share its territory. Elias exhales sharply. So we're not alone out here. Knox slings his rifle back over his shoulder and stands. We never were. The deeper they go, the thicker the trees become, their twisted trunks forming a suffocating tunnel. The canopy above blocks out much of the daylight, leaving only streaks of pale light filtering through the leaves. Knox moves ahead, always keeping a bit of distance. The rest of the group follows in tense silence, stepping carefully over tangled roots and damp, moss-covered ground. Then, the first sign. A branch snaps, not from one of them. Dax whirls, gun up, scanning the trees. Nothing. Could have been an animal, Lena whispers. Knox doesn't look convinced. His gaze sweeps across the treetops, the dark spaces between the branches, watching, listening. A few minutes later, the second sign. Elias stops mid-step, staring at something ahead. A backpack, half buried in the leaves. Dirty, torn, like it's been sitting there for months. Harper kneels, brushing away the damp leaves and mud. The zipper is open, the insides gutted, clothes shredded, no supplies left. Dax frowns. Someone else passed through here. Knox steps forward, studying it. Not just someone who didn't make it. No one speaks. They keep moving. Then, the third sign. Knox stops abruptly, his posture stiffening. He crouches and touches the dirt. When he lifts his fingers, they're wet. A dark red smear stains his glove. Blood. Fresh. Before anyone can speak, a low clicking sound echoes from somewhere deep in the woods. A chittering, like something scraping its limbs against bark. Lena grips her knife. Please tell me that was a bird. Knox's voice is low, firm. That wasn't a bird. Knox's voice is sharp, barely above a whisper. Take cover. Watch your backs. Before anyone can respond, he's already moving, silent, controlled, disappearing into the trees. The others barely have time to react before the forest shifts. A low rustling, then absolute silence. Elias grips his rifle, eyes darting around the tangled undergrowth. Dax presses against a fallen log, his knife already in hand. Harper swallows hard, her fingers twitching over her pistol. Then, movement. Something fast. a blur of pale, mottled flesh against the trees. It moves in a way that isn't natural, a sickening, insect-like grace, darting between trunks without making a sound. Lena's breath catches. There. It's gone. Dax grits his teeth. It's circling us. Then, the attack. A figure bursts from the trees at an unnatural speed. The stalker. Its limbs are long and emaciated, the fungal growths along its spine pulsing faintly. No eyes, no mouth, just slits where a nose should be, sniffing. It lunges for Harper. She barely twists away as clawed fingers slice the air where her throat was seconds ago, until something intercepts. Dr. Cole. She moves in a blur, slamming into the stalker mid-air. The impact sends them both crashing to the ground in a tangle of limbs. The stalker lashes out, but Dr. Cole is faster. She dodges, her movements unnatural, almost too precise, like she already knows what the creature will do next. Dax raises his rifle, but his jaw clenches. Too close. He can't fire without hitting her. The stalker writhes beneath her, its tendrils whipping around, trying to snare her arms. Dr. Cole pivots, her knee pressing into its chest, pinning it down. Then, a gunshot. The stalker's head jerks back. A single, precise bullet rips through its skull. Its body twitches once, then slumps. Dr. Cole exhales sharply and pushes herself off the corpse. Blood smears her hands, but she doesn't react to it. She just stands, adjusting her coat. The others turn toward the source of the shot. Knox emerges from the trees, rifle still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. He lowers it as he approaches. For a moment, no one speaks. Then, Knox stops in front of Dr. Cole, his expression unreadable. Slowly, he nods. Didn't think I'd see one of you fight like that. Dr. Cole meets his gaze, unfazed. You haven't seen much then. A beat of silence. Then, Knox actually smirks, just slightly. Maybe not. He shoulders his rifle and walks past the group. Let's keep moving. The shift is there. Knox saw it, and for the first time, he's starting to see her. We need to move. Now. Knox's voice is sharp and urgent. Stay close. Double time. The gunfire's gonna bring more. No one argues. They start moving. The forest blurs as they push into a jog, dodging roots and fallen branches. Knox leads, his rifle bouncing against his shoulder. His voice is low but firm as he speaks, forcing the information between heavy breaths. Those things, you call them harvesters but are different. Those were stalkers. Lena glances over. They're more advanced, aren't they? Knox nods without looking back. Yeah, you don't hear 'em coming. Smarter than the rest. Hunters. Dax mutters a curse. Great. Just what we needed. Knox continues, scanning the trees. They don't hunt in packs like the others, but if one howls, the rest come. And if they're here, means the hive's got eyes on this place. Harper glances at the treetops. You think they're watching us? Knox doesn't answer right away. Then, quietly, always. A distant screech cuts through the trees. Lena stiffens. That's not distant enough. Knox curses. Move. Faster. They push harder. The incline gets steeper. The facility is close now, hidden among the craggy rocks. Then, movement behind them. The trees shift. Shadows dart. The sounds of something gaining. Elias's lungs burn, but he doesn't stop. We're not gonna make it before they reach us. Knox's eyes flick toward the ridge ahead. The entrance is just beyond it. Dax snarls. Then we fight at the door. The facility looms ahead, dark and foreboding against the mountain. A metal entrance, half buried in rock. The stalkers are closing in. They have to reach it first. Breaking in under pressure. Knox skids to a stop near the entrance, eyes scanning the heavy metal door embedded in the mountainside. It's old, rusted around the edges, but solid. No handles, no keypads in sight. Just a reinforced panel where an access lock used to be. Shit, Harper hisses, dropping to her knees beside the panel. This thing is ancient. Give me a sec. A howl splits the air. Closer. Too close. Dax and Knox turn as shadows flicker between the trees. No time, Dax growls. We hold the line. Knox doesn't argue. He drops to a knee, rifle up. Elias and Lena press against the door, weapons ready. Harper's hands fly over the exposed wiring, yanking out a cluster of frayed, dust-coated cables. Click, click, click. A stalker emerges, pale, elongated limbs, milky, pupil-less eyes. Its fungal-ridden mouth peels open, revealing jagged remnants of human teeth. It doesn't charge. It studies them. Then, it shrieks. The forest erupts. Dax fires first, a short, controlled burst. The stalker jerks, but doesn't drop. Instead, it lunges sideways, vanishing into the trees. More shapes move behind it. Knox's rifle booms. Another stalker crumples. "Harper!" Elias shouts. "Almost there!" She barks, fingers moving frantically. The wires spark. Lena fires at another shadow. "They're trying to flank us!" A stalker bursts from the left, racing toward Harper. Elias spins, fires, headshot. The creature collapses inches away. Beep. The lock flashes green. "Got it!" Harper yells. The door groans, hissing as it slides open just enough for them to squeeze through. "Inside, now!" Dax orders. Then, a stalker drops from above. It moves faster than the others, landing in a crouch between the team and the door. Before anyone can react, Dr. Cole steps forward. The stalker lunges. Cole doesn't flinch. Her body moves unnaturally fast. One moment still, the next a blur. Her clawed fingers slice upward, raking across the creature's throat. The fungal flesh peels back in wet layers. The stalker gurgles, stumbling. Cole grabs its skull with both hands and twists. A sickening crack. The body slumps at her feet. The team stares. Then, another shriek. More coming. "Inside! Move!" Dax barks, snapping them out of it. They backpedal, firing as they move. Stalkers explode from the tree line, rushing forward. Knox is the last one through. He fires one final shot, then yanks the door shut. Thud. Something slams against it. Claws scrape metal. Then, silence. The only sound is their ragged breathing. Elias glances at Dr. Cole. Her fingers are still curled, blood dripping from her claws. Her eyes, dark, unreadable, linger on the corpse at her feet. Knox exhales, shaking his head. You really are something else. They've made it inside, but now they have no idea what waits for them in the dark. The heavy metal doors groaned as they locked into place, sealing the team inside the abandoned facility. Outside, the last echoes of screeching stalkers faded into the wind, but inside, nothing. Just the hum of stale air trapped in dead silence. Flashlights flicked on, beams cutting through the dust-choked darkness. The entry hall stretched ahead, flanked by shattered security glass and overturned furniture. A front desk sat abandoned, its monitors dark, its chair toppled over as if someone had left in a hurry. But it was the far wall that made them stop. Dripping streaks of long-dried blood smeared across the metal surface, forming jagged, uneven letters. Some strokes were too thick, others too thin, as if the message had been scrawled in desperation or madness. Your time ends and we begin. Harper exhaled sharply. That's comforting. Knox stepped closer, tilting his head. That's not a warning. His voice was low, unreadable. That's a declaration. Lena traced the air just above the letters, frowning. The phrasing, it's like a transition, as if whoever wrote this knew something was coming, that they weren't just going to die, they were going to become something else. Elias adjusted his grip on his rifle, or they already had. No one spoke. The facility around them felt heavier now, the air thick with an unseen weight. It wasn't just abandoned, it had been claimed. Dax tore his gaze from the message, scanning the hall. Let's move. We're burning time. They pushed forward, deeper into the facility, but the words lingered, echoing in their minds. The hive had left its mark here, and it was waiting. Echoes of the past. The facility's main floor was eerily silent. Dust coated the tile floors, and the air was thick with the scent of rot and mildew. Elias led the group cautiously down the hallway, their boots crunching over scattered debris. The walls were lined with old bulletin boards, faded documents still pinned in place, some with red, terminated stamps across them. Lena pushed open the door to one of the conference rooms. Inside, a long metal table sat covered in old files, cracked tablets, and empty coffee cups, fossilized with time. A large whiteboard stood against the wall, covered in smeared writing. She traced a finger over the words. Some were scientific notes, theories about the hive's neural structure. But one phrase stood out, hastily scrawled in red marker. It watches, even when we sleep. Lena exhaled, turning to the others. They knew something was wrong before this place fell. Dax sifted through the scattered papers, pulling out a printed memo. All personnel must submit to cognitive testing before leaving the lower levels. Any signs of abnormal brain activity must be reported immediately. Knox raised an eyebrow. They were checking their own people. Dr. Cole nodded. Because the hive doesn't just infect bodies. It learns. It changes how you think. The cafeteria was a graveyard of unfinished meals and overturned chairs. Mold-covered trays sat where they had been abandoned. Near the far wall, a pile of skeletons lay slumped against an overturned table. Dax knelt, brushing dust from one of the skulls. A bullet hole was punched clean through. Suicide. Knox's jaw tightened. Guess they knew what was coming. Harper moved to a bulletin screen on the wall, tapping at the controls. The screen flickered to life, displaying the last recorded announcement. Attention all personnel. Facility lockdown protocol is now in effect. Do not attempt to access the lower levels without high-level clearance. All security teams report to Sector B immediately. Elias glanced at the others. Sector B, that must be where things went to hell. On the second floor, they found a hallway lined with frosted glass office doors. One stood out, larger, reinforced, with a nameplate that read, Dr. Victor Harrington, Director of Research. Harper smirked. Bet this guy knew all the good secrets. The door was locked, but Knox kicked it open with a sharp crack. Inside, the office was strangely untouched. Papers still neatly stacked, a dusty coffee mug resting on the desk. Harper went straight to the desktop terminal, fingers flying over the keyboard. Let's see what you were hiding, Doc. The screen flickered, revealing old messages. To all senior staff, the latest signal tests have yielded unexpected results. The hive's response patterns suggest a form of cognitive processing beyond initial projections. We may not be dealing with a mindless pathogen. Another message. Specimen X06 has begun mimicking speech. It's unclear whether this is an independent response or a direct hive relay. Further study required. Lena's stomach churned, mimicking speech. Elias exchanged a glance with Dax. We've seen that before. Harper scrolled further, then froze. Guys, we might have a problem. She turned the monitor toward them. A security alert. Status: containment breach detected. Location: lower levels. Specimen: unknown. Knox exhaled sharply. We need to get to the bottom floor. Now. The first descent. The stairwell swallowed them in darkness as they moved deeper into the underground levels. Elias kept his flashlight aimed ahead, the narrow beam slicing through the dust-choked air. The further they descended, the colder it became. Unnatural, like the facility itself had been drained of warmth. Knox let out a low whistle. Smells like something died down here. Dax adjusted his grip on his rifle. Yeah, a lot of somethings. At the bottom of the stairwell, a reinforced security door stood partially open. The metal was bent inward, deep claw marks gouging through it. Whatever had been kept down here, it had broken out. Harper shined her light across the walls. Dried blood. A lot of it. Smears, handprints, drag marks. Lena swallowed hard. This place wasn't abandoned. They were overrun. They stepped inside a large containment area lined with shattered glass enclosures. The glass had cracked outward. Things had broken out, not in. Inside the cells, twisted skeletal remains were slumped in unnatural positions. Some still had fungal tendrils sprouting from their skulls. Elias moved closer, examining the remains. These were test subjects. Dr. Cole stepped beside him. Her expression remained unreadable, but something about the way her claws flexed slightly said she didn't like what she was seeing. Harper crouched near a control panel, dusting off a cracked screen. I might be able to pull old security footage from this. Give me a sec. While Harper worked, Lena moved toward an adjacent security office, its door hanging ajar. Inside, monitors lined the walls, most broken or dark. One still flickered weakly. Grainy footage played on a loop. A scientist in a lab coat, his face gaunt with exhaustion, appeared on screen. He spoke in hushed tones. The subject: it's adapting. We tried the neurological tethering, tried to cut it offal from the hive. But it's still connected. It knows what we're doing. It's learning from us. The video cut, static crackling. Then, another clip. A different scientist, this time frantic. If this thing gets out, if it reaches the surface... Oh God, it's looking at me. The screen went dark. Dax exhaled sharply. So much for controlling the damn thing. Elias turned to the others. This isn't just a research facility. It was a containment site. Then, the flickering monitor flashed once more. A new video feed. A camera feed from a lower level, a shape moved across the ceiling. Slowly, deliberately. Lena's breath hitched. That's not human. Knox took a step closer, eyes narrowing. We're not alone down here. The Watcher in the Dark. The underground level felt like stepping into a tomb. Dust hung in the air, disturbed only by their movements, and the scent of decay clung to every surface. The fluorescent lights flickered weakly, casting erratic shadows that seemed to twitch at the edges of their vision. Harper shuddered. I swear I feel eyes on me. You're not wrong, Knox muttered, keeping his rifle raised. Something's here. Dr. Cole remained quiet, her eyes scanning the walls, the stains, the remnants of something long past. When they entered the first research lab, she moved ahead of the others, running a hand over a shattered monitor. This place is a graveyard, Lena whispered. No. Cole's voice was flat. This place was a hatchery. Elias turned to her. What do you mean? Cole sifted through a pile of old research notes, scanning the scribbled handwriting and data entries. She pulled out one page in particular, flipping it toward them. This isn't just research. These scientists weren't studying the hive. They were feeding it. Dax frowned. Feeding it how? Cole exhaled. Look here. She pointed to a series of test logs detailing experimental procedures. They were testing ways to transmit knowledge between harvesters. The hive wasn't just evolving naturally. It was being guided. Harper leaned over her shoulder, eyes narrowing at the notes. Wait, are you saying the hive didn't just learn on its own? Someone helped it get smarter? Cole nodded. More than that. They were trying to speed it up. These experiments weren't just about observation. They were trying to create something new. Elias flipped to another page and felt his stomach twist. A crude sketch of a harvester, not like the ones they'd encountered before. This one had extra limbs, 6 long, jagged appendages sprouting from its back. Below it, in bold red ink, your time ends and we begin. Dax tightened his grip on his rifle. That doesn't sound like normal scientist scribbles. Cole took the page, staring at the message. It's not. That's not their handwriting. A silence settled over them. Lena exhaled sharply. So, what? A harvester wrote this? Cole hesitated, then nodded. Or something close to it. They moved deeper down the hallway, stepping over dried blood trails and skeletal remains. Another room, another grim discovery. A body, slumped against the wall, its lab coat torn and stained. In its bony fingers, a cracked tablet. Harper powered it on. A single file remained. She played it. A scientist, wild-eyed and desperate, appeared on the screen. If you find this, if Fanyona finds this, well, we're wrong. We thought we could understand it. We thought we could control it. Behind him, a shadow moved, something long and limbed, shifting across the ceiling. Cole took a slow step closer, her expression unreadable. It's still here, the scientist whispered. It's waiting. It's watching. A deep click, click, click echoed through the video. The scientist turned, something lunged. Static. The screen cut out. A long, tense silence filled the room. Then, click, click, click. A sound drifted from down the hallway. Something was watching. And now, it knew they were here. The silence in the underground chamber stretched, thick with a tension that made the air feel heavier. The camera feeds flickered, distorted lines dragging across the screen as the nightmarish figure in the ceiling's shadows shifted. Then, it moved. The captain descended in a slow, unnatural motion, its 6 elongated legs bending at impossible angles as it clung to the walls. Its body was humanoid. Too humanoid. The remnants of its former self clung to its skeletal frame like a grotesque mockery of life. Patches of rotted flesh stretched across its elongated face, lips barely concealing jagged, fungal-covered teeth. It turned its head sharply, as if listening. And then, it spoke. Not alone, it rasped, voice layered, as if multiple mouths whispered in unison. More, we come! A guttural clicking sound vibrated from deep within its chest, like an insect's chitter. It tilted its head toward the station controls, fungal tendrils slithering from its spine and intertwining with the equipment. Build, swarm, grow, tower, hive, stronger. Lena's breath hitched. It's transmitting orders. Harper swallowed hard, eyes darting between the controls and the creature. We shut it down. Right now. The captain twitched violently, its body jerking in response. The ceiling above trembled. Something was moving. Many things. It turned its hollow gaze to them, its mouth curling into something that might have once been a grin. Too late. The lights flickered, the walls groaned, and the screaming of the swarm began. The swarm wrath. The lights flickered, casting erratic shadows across the ruined lab. The captain lunged first, its 6 limbs propelling it across the ceiling like a grotesque spider. The low-level harvesters surged forward in unison, their howls reverberating through the underground corridors. Dax fired first. Short, controlled bursts. One harvester crumpled, another staggered, twitching but still moving. Then, chaos. The swarm slammed into them. Knox's rifle cracked. A harvester's skull split open, but another tackled him, driving him against a console. Sparks rained as equipment shattered. Dr. Cole moved like a phantom, weaving between the chaos. A harvester swiped at her. She ducked low, blades extending from her fingertips. With a twisting motion, she sliced through its throat. Black ichor sprayed the walls. Elias fired wildly, his back hitting a terminal. His pulse thundered in his ears. The captain's voice slithered through the room. A chorus of stolen voices, layered and broken. You break, but we become. It dropped from the ceiling. The weight of its limbs smashed into Dax, sending him sprawling. The ex-soldier rolled instinctively, narrowly avoiding a spear-like limb that embedded into the floor where his chest had been. Harper ducked behind a terminal, panting. Tell me someone has a plan. Lena's answer was a gunshot. She fired into a harvester's skull point blank, its body convulsing before collapsing. The captain's head snapped toward her. Voice, strong. Mind, open. Join. Us. Lena's blood ran cold. Then Knox tackled the creature from behind, a knife driving into the sinewy muscle near its shoulder. The captain shrieked. With terrifying speed, it kicked backward. Knox flew, hit the wall, a sickening crunch. He crumpled, unmoving. Knox! Elias barely had time to react before a harvester slammed into him, knocking his rifle away. Teeth snapped inches from his throat. Dr. Cole was there. Her fingers pierced the harvester's skull. The creature spasmed, then went still. She ripped her hand free, breathing heavy, black ichor dripping from her claws. The swarm was relentless. Harper's cover exploded as a harvester yanked the terminal apart. She scrambled backward, kicking wildly as it lunged. Dax's fist crashed into the creature's jaw. Then he grabbed Harper and hauled her up. We need to end this, now! The captain's body twisted unnaturally. It knew. It felt the tide shifting. No, not done. Swarm. Rises. It turned. Fled. Hell no. Dax raised his rifle, ready to finish it. A harvester blindsided him. He hit the floor hard. Something in his shoulder popped. Elias grabbed him, dragging him back. We have to go, now! The swarm was regrouping. They needed to end this or escape. Lena's fingers tightened around her weapon. Harper's mind raced. Knox groaned, blood dripping from his temple. Dax gritted his teeth, shoulder hanging limp. Dr. Cole stood, bloodied but standing. And in the distance, the captain's shrill laughter echoed. They were not done yet. The Hive's gambit. The emergency lights pulsed red, flickering like a dying heartbeat. The facility trembled with distant movements. The swarm was regrouping. Dax's breathing was ragged. His shoulder was dislocated, his right arm nearly useless. Knox was dazed, blood seeping from a gash on his forehead. Elias felt his own ribs screaming in protest as he hauled Knox up. We keep moving, Dax grunted, forcing himself upright. Harper checked the nearest terminal, her fingers shaking. If we go deeper, we'll be cut off from the exit. Lena swallowed hard. We have to shut that signal down. Elias nodded. If we don't, the swarm will grow. We can't let that happen. From the hallway behind them, a chittering sound. The harvesters were coming. Dr. Cole's head tilted slightly, eyes narrowing. She turned toward the dark hallway, listening. Then she stiffened. A voice slithered through the corridor, a warped, inhuman mockery of speech. You break. Like all before. Lena shuddered. That's the captain. Knox swayed on his feet but pulled his rifle up, teeth gritted. Then let's finish this bastard. Dax grabbed his own weapon with his good arm, adjusting his stance. Harper exhaled, checked her ammo. No turning back now. They pressed forward. The lower level reeked of decay. The walls were covered in black fungal growth, pulsing slightly, alive. Skeletons lay scattered, their bones picked clean. Some still wore shredded hazmat suits, their last moments frozen in time. Then they saw it. A massive terminal, still active. Its screens displayed a pulsating wave, the signal controlling the harvesters. Lena stepped closer, her breath shallow. This is how they communicate. Elias' stomach turned. They're evolving faster than we thought. Harper's fingers flew across the controls. I can shut this down, but I'll need beep. The monitors flickered. A new video feed activated, and on the screen, a human face. But not human anymore. The captain. It stared at them through the monitor, head twitching. Then, in its grotesque, broken voice, we grow. We rise. You end. The speakers screeched. The walls shuddered. The swarm had arrived. And this time, there was no escape. The signal falls. The alarm wailed. The hive's captain had spoken its final command. The swarm was here. The walls shuddered, metal groaning as low-level harvesters skittered through the vents, spilling from the darkness like spiders. Dax fired first, his rifle flashing in the dim light, but his injured shoulder made his aim sloppy. Knox was on his knee, still groggy, but he managed to take down two with well-placed shots. Then, the captain descended. It crawled from the ceiling, its 6 legs piercing the metal with each deliberate movement. Its human face twitched, jaw unhinging as it spoke through bloodied, ruined teeth. Signal. Stands. You kneel. Then it lunged. Dr. Cole met it head-on. She slashed upward with her claws, her movements blurring. The captain twisted, dodging with an unnatural grace, then lashed out. Its leg struck Cole's ribs with a sickening crack. She hit the floor hard. Harper screamed, "The terminal! I can shut it down!" Elias covered her, firing at the advancing swarm. Stalkers climbed down the walls, shrieking. Dax switched to his knife as a harvester tackled him, gnashing its fungal-ridden teeth. He rammed the blade under its jaw, twisting. Lena tried to flank, but the captain moved too fast. It snatched her leg mid-sprint, throwing her into Knox. The captain's neck snapped toward Harper. It knew what she was doing. It charged. Dr. Cole moved. Despite her wounds, she gripped the captain's leg, claws digging deep. It screeched, losing momentum. Harper's fingers flew over the keyboard. Almost there! Elias saw the captain rear back, preparing to crush Cole. He grabbed a fallen harvester's blade-like limb and drove it into the captain's back. The captain shrieked, convulsing. Harper smashed the final key. The signal cut. The swarm froze. The captain twitched. Harper grabbed the detonator. Move! Dax and Knox hauled Dr. Cole up, blood trailing behind them. Elias dragged Lena to her feet. They sprinted up the stairwell, ignoring the tremors around them. The explosives detonated. The lower levels erupted in flame. The captain screamed, its final warped cry lost in the collapse. The team staggered out of the ruined facility, battered, bloody, and barely standing. But they had won, or so they thought. Because as the smoke cleared, the lieutenant was waiting. It stood on the ridge, 10 feet of armored monstrosity, surrounded by a silent army, watching, waiting. The war was far from over. The mountain air was thinner now, colder, sharper. It bit at their skin as they limped out of the ruined facility, bruised, bloodied, and broken. Ash clung to their clothes. The smoke from the destroyed signal tower still curled faintly behind them, rising like a dying breath into the pale morning sky. No one spoke. Not Lena, whose hands trembled from adrenaline and trauma. Not Dax, whose dislocated shoulder hung useless at his side. Not Elias, who stared at the horizon with eyes that had seen too much. Not Harper, silent for once, her mind spinning with what she'd learned. Not Dr. Cole, whose quiet muttering held more grief than pride. And not Knox, whose rifle was down but gaze still scanned the tree line like it wasn't over. Because it wasn't. The path ahead had never been more uncertain. They had taken the fight to the hive and survived, but just barely. They had seen what the enemy was becoming, what it was building: spore towers, swarms, captains, signals, a future where humanity had no place. And then the wind died. The birds went silent, and the earth seemed to hold its breath. One by one they turned. At the edge of the clearing, the trees stood unnaturally still, until something massive stepped between them. The harvester lieutenant, 10 feet tall, a shell of bone and fungal armor, eyes like molten amber. Behind it, an army of infected, unmoving, as if frozen in place by its silent command. The group raised their weapons, though they knew they were spent, wounded, exhausted, outmatched. But they stood, because even as the hive evolved, so would they. This wasn't the end, it was only the beginning.